During my recent visit to the serene Sri Bhadrika ashram at Himachal, on my spiritual quest with a head full of questions, I met a tree. It was an ordinary, indifferent tree until it was not. I watched it at sunrise, observed it after dark, when it spoke with the murmur of the holy river flowing not too far. I played my flute for it, with it. We talked and it swayed in harmony. On the third night, the tree, the flute, the body, the night sky gave way to the Guru, Om Swami. I was scheduled to see him the next morning, but he came early, as Gurus do. Maybe it was the right time. Maybe the student was ready. In my search for wisdom, I have traveled the world, left home at the age of 21 to study literature and films at the University of Liverpool in England. But this isn't about me. It's about my quest and how Om Swami helped me get back to the basics after running all over. Namaskar everyone, this is Harshit Bhardwaj. Today I am going to share 5 life lessons that I have acquired from Om Swamiji. I would like to start by telling you a little secret that I have decoded, which is the gist of last 20-25 years of my quest to understand life. I think it's the paradox of the great masters that I have decoded. You all follow spiritual gurus. I'm sure a lot of followers and devotees of Om Swamiji would be watching this video. I have been reading and following with my heart great masters like Osho Rajneesh, J. Krishnamurti, Friedrich Nietzsche, Alan Watts, the British philosopher and spiritual seeker, Swami Vivekananda, and recently for last 4 or 5 years, Om Swamiji. What I mean by the paradox, that sometimes we feel, and when we follow the great masters and their teachings via their books or videos or podcasts or whatever, we find a lot of contradictory things. And it takes us a lot of time to really understand what they mean. So is it deliberate? For example, the great Chinese spiritual master Lao Tzu, in The Art of War, he says the greatest warrior wins a battle without fighting. Now, isn't that contradictory? He says the greatest action comes without any efforts. Osho says, do not follow me, find your own truth. Do not listen to me, find your own truth. And at the same time, he ended up giving thousands and thousands of lectures and sermons. That came to me as a kind of a contradiction. Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna, when he says, I am neither within nor without, is an extremely paradoxical statement to understand and decode. But then I realized, why do all great masters, why are they paradoxical? Why they talk in extremes? Why they talk in contradictions? Why they present the dichotomies of life in both the extremes? I think it's very simple. The message from the Bible, the Quran, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, all the great texts, all the great masters, boils down to the simplest truths. God is love, love is God, everyone is part of the superconsciousness, and very simple stuff. But when a great master tells you that this is it, you practice love, compassion, gratitude, kindness. So why are all great masters paradoxical? this is a long discussion. But I think when the truth is simple, and a great master will tell you the truth simply, we don't get it. Because we believe the way we've been socially conditioned, we believe that it can't be that simple, is it? I know it. I know you should always speak the truth. I know you should do the good karmas. We all know that. And the great master is also telling you, just do this. So we don't get it. We don't connect. Then the great masters, and I'm specifically talking in this video about Om Swamiji, then they deliberately, holding the ear like this, they hold it like this. And they talk in contradictions. They talk in dichotomies. They talk in paradoxes. So where do we meet the message? Where do we access that message? Where do we connect with the message of the great masters? So I've made 5 ideas that I've understood, and they're all paradoxical, but I have spent time and understood them. The first life lesson, and it is the simplest message, but as I said, it has to be complicated enough for us to understand, and that in itself is a paradox. Om Swamiji said in his book Mindful to Mindful that nothing matters eventually. Nothing really matters eventually. And then this was also mentioned in the book The Big Questions of Life. He refers to mindful to mindfulness, and I've heard him talk about this almost in all the discourses. Nothing matters eventually. He explains it by saying that, why do you take your life so seriously? So all the things that matter to us, all the things, be it this workplace, this studio I am in, my business, my cars, my houses, my bank balance, my relationships, my wife, my mother, my children, my colleagues, my friends, my body. So all that matters to us. In the eternal truth, this all does not matter. Now it's a little difficult for a lot of people to understand, but I'm going to talk about how I understood it. And we take things too seriously, and we forget the eternal truth that everything is transient. And as an entrepreneur, I understand it pretty well, that we acquire clients, we serve the clients, and the clients go and probably never meet, ever. We meet people in life, we had a great time, and then they go. So that metaphor of a journey, you're going on a train journey or a plane journey, and you meet amazing people, great experiences, great communication. And they get off the plane, you go to your destination, they go to their destination. You don't take it too seriously. You forget. You had a great time, fantastic. You move on with your life. So why do we get so much stuck in all these things that we feel matter to us? So just take a little chill pill, take it easy. That's what I learned from Swamiji. Take it easy. Don't take anything too seriously, because eventually nothing matters. So that's the first life lesson I've acquired, and it's so simple and so beautiful. The second life lesson that I've learned, and it's probably one of the big messages, again, when told simply, it comes across as very simplistic. We all feel, oh, I know it. He said, pain is inevitable, death is certain, but life is uncertain. So it's again a paradox. When you're saying pain is inevitable and death is the only certainty, so how do you live your life with inevitable pain? That's the question I asked. So if pain is inevitable, that's the only thing certain is pain and death. And death is not just your own death. Again, coming from the first point that nothing matters, everything is transient. Death of people around you, death of things around you, death of experiences around you, everything is transient and impermanent. And pain is inevitable. Then how do you live your life? So on the one hand, he says pain is inevitable. On the other hand, he says that's all the more reason for you to enjoy your life with adventure, right? With beauty and with captivating experiences. So he mentions this as A, B, C of life in the big questions of life. It comes across as a paradox that pain is inevitable, then how the hell am I supposed to live my life? But that's the beauty. Because pain is inevitable, you accept it, it's going to be there. Then he adds that suffering is optional. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. How beautiful is that? And how simple is that? That's the second life lesson that I've learned. Third life lesson that is very practical, and I have been using this for a long time, at least last 10 years of my life. And when I heard Swamiji talking about it, I kind of felt validated. And I've taught this to a lot of people, and I talk about this. This life lesson is about the art of distraction. So, last 10 years of my life have been a roller coaster ride. They've been really up and down, and a crazy ECG graph. So, there have been times where I had nothing to do. There have been times for months on end where I was like sitting at home with no ideas, nothing to look forward to, nothing happening. I'm not talking about the COVID years, even before that. And things happen. So whenever something negative, something unwanted happen in your life, whenever it happens, in your personal life, in your professional life, in your social life, the biggest reason of grief that I've found is that we get stuck with it. We get stuck with it. So where the art of distraction comes is that you find a way to get out of it physically and emotionally as soon as possible. And Swamiji talked about it in a video and also on the blog very beautifully, that it's not running away or escaping. It's a trick, it's kind of a hack, that you had an argument with someone, maybe your wife, maybe your kids, maybe your boss, and you're covered in those negative vibes in that space. It doesn't matter how much you meditate and how awakened you are, it's going to affect you for a few moments, and there's those few moments, few minutes would snowball into probably hours and maybe probably days and weeks. So the trick of distraction is right there in that moment when you realize that this is happening, you have to exit. And I've done it, like I do it all the time. You go out for a walk, physically and emotionally get out of that situation as soon as you can. Distract, cover it with something else. So normally I would take a walk, I would just get out of the house or get out of that building as soon as possible. So physically changing place immensely helps. Emotionally, you do something else that requires your full attention. So normally what I do is I play music. Normally what I do is I would read a book. For some people, it'll be a book. It'll be a musical instrument. For somebody, it'll be watching a film. Sometimes it's too much. You can't focus on a film or read a book. So do something lighter. Go take a walk. Go eat somewhere. Ring a friend. Call a friend. Meet a friend. Whatever it takes to get you out of that situation physically and emotionally. So that art of distraction is a wonderful life lesson that I have been practicing, and I felt good when Swamiji also talked about it. It's not the art of escaping, it's simply getting out of that zone right there and you can ponder about it maybe after a few hours, but once you broke the chain, it helps. Trust me, try it in your life. So, the fourth life lesson is for me the ultimate gist and the overall life lesson that I have understood, and I think it's the biggest for me. And as I said, it's the simplest message, but it required so much of maneuvering around to make the point. As I said, Om Swamiji has put together a wonderful app called Sadhana app, which details so many great spiritual practices with all the rules, the disciplines, all that is needed, and it's designed in the most wonderful 3D way. Very beautiful app. You should check it out. And he has been helping people understand the spiritual path by doing a lot of workshops like Kundalini workshop, Dhyan workshop for corporates, for students, and everywhere he gives two ways, two paths, right? So, for example, when he talks about the Kundalini, and right in the beginning, and I've listened to the audiobook on Audible, he right in the beginning he said there is an extensive path and there is a shorter path, right? And he said, I will tell you both. Now, whenever someone says this, that this is the longer path and this is the shorter path, so you would ask, which one is right? Right? Obviously, everyone wants a shorter path. So I'm thinking, can I take the shorter path? Is it as good? Obviously, the shorter path cannot be as good. That's why there is a longer path. So he talks about the extensive path and he talks about the shorter version, shorter path. Why is he doing it? Yeah. So I told you about the paradox. So when I listen to the entire that audiobook on Kundalini, and it's brilliantly done. It's not simply reading out of the book. It's all completely improvised, and I found it much more enlightening than just reading the book. Book is a wonderful put together of his ideas, but this audio series is even better. So you should check it out. He talks about the longer and the shorter path, and then he says you don't need either of these if you do this. And that has become, I found this message of Swamiji everywhere. He pens down the extensive, profound route of finding the self, and then he says, well, you don't really need this if you do this. So what is this other thing that he talks about, the simpler truth that I told you in the beginning? So in that, even in the Kundalini sessions, then there is an audible session series about Dhyan Yoga, and I've heard and read in other books as well. Swamiji invariably comes down, after penning down the longer, the profound sadhana route, he gives you the shortest shortcut, the simplest. And that's the beauty of his messages. So what is this? So what have I acquired from the entire canon of Swamiji's books and podcasts and audiobooks and discourses and lessons? He pens down 4 pointers for everyone to try and inculcate. The first one is compassion, that he calls karuna in Sanskrit. Second one is Vairagya or detachment, which I'll come back in the next point. That in itself is a huge pointer. So compassion, karuna, Vairagya or detachment, Atmanushasan or self-discipline, and the fourth one is Kritagyata or gratitude. So Swamiji said in the most clear phrasing that if you can acquire these 4 traits, and make it part of you. Compassion, self-discipline, detachment, and gratitude. Then you will automatically be mindful. You will automatically be placed where you want to go. This is the destination. You'll be in the dhyan. You'll be in the eternal state of dhyan. And in the world where even business tycoons and entrepreneurs like Gary Vee, I follow Gary Vee. This is his recent post that I captured. Gary Vee, multi-million dollar, entrepreneur and idea machine. Everyone knows him. He started talking about kindness and compassion in business. So compassion, self-discipline, detachment, and gratitude. If you just acquire this, everything else is sorted. So I think I've got the magic formula, and I'm learning. I want to learn. I want to know more about all these 4 traits, but I have got the shortcut. I've got the shortest formula encapsulated in 4 words. Now the last one, the last life lesson is one of these 4 traits that Swamiji talked about, is about the idea of detachment. And I was lucky that I was recently, when I went to the Vairagya ashram, during one of the discourses, I was sitting only 6 feet away from Swamiji. I heard him answer this question on detachment or Vairagya. This is again comes across as a paradox, a contradiction. He says detachment does not mean leaving, ignoring, or rejecting the world, which is what commonly understood about Vairagya. He says it's not about leaving, ignoring, or rejecting the world. It's about maintaining a safe distance, safe objective distance with everything that you acquired in the material world, and still be very, very curious about it. And the greatest example that is given in the Big Questions of Life book is that when a parent or a mother or a father, when they're watching their children playing in the park, so they let them go and they're playing in the park, they keep a strict eye. So they haven't left them alone, they haven't rejected or ignored them, but they have maintained a safe distance. And taking it further, when the children grow up, they go out into the world, make their own individual forays into the world. You detach yourself by not completely blocking them out of your life, keeping a strict eye, but maintaining a safe distance, a safe gap where you're not affected by everything that's happening in their life. So for me, that's a brilliant example of detachment while still living in this world. So for example, I want to buy a Volvo XC60. That has been a long-term desire of mine. So I used to feel, is it attachment to the material things? Or I want to buy this or that, or I want to have this or that, and So I've learned that you use the things for what they are, but with a safe distance. Don't be too much emotionally attached to it. It's just a car. You feels good when you drive it, but when it's parked, when it's there, it's not part of you. It's not part of you. So don't make things part of you. Just things are things. This is my practical interpretation of it. It might be a little different from what Swamiji meant, and like everything I said is all my interpretation. So he gave a very good example in the Big Questions of Life, that like a yogi with snakes wrapped around his neck. The snakes are like things or attachments that you can't do without, but you are aware, but you're not too attached to it. It can't harm you as long as you're not attached to it and it's under control. If it becomes too friendly, too much part of you, If you give it too much attention, then it can become problematic. So everything that we have around, the relationships, the cars, the houses, your iPhones, your MacBooks, your clients, your children, everything that we have acquired around us in the material world, we do not ignore them, reject them, or block them, but at the same time, we are not too attached to them so that they can affect us internally. So we create a vacuum, a chasm, a gap, and that's a pretty fantastic way of dealing with things. So these are the 5 life lessons that I've acquired from Swamiji's learnings, and I'm so grateful to have come across. I'm so grateful to have got the chance to meet him in person for 5 minutes. And I will talk about that meeting in some other video. If you'd like to know more about that, you can reach out to me and I can discuss this, because that's very, very personal. I will end this session by sharing with you a poem, a part of a poem by one of the greatest poets that I feel he is one of the greatest poets ever in the history of this civilization. And his name is T.S. Eliot. I recently taught this poem to my students. And this is one of the most complicated poems of all times. I've been reading it, I've been teaching it for some time. But after coming across Swamiji's learnings, this poem has a completely different meaning. The part that I'm going to read, when you'll hear it, and I really suggest you to read the entire poem. I'll give you the names and everything. This part that I'm going to read encapsulates everything that I understand about Om Swamiji and his paradox. I feel that these lines were written by him in a cryptic language. And it's so incredible that this was written by somebody who was born in America and who lived his entire life in England and ended up becoming one of the greatest authors and poets. So I'll read these lines to you, and the text will appear in the side. So enjoy this. So this poem that I told you reminds me of Swamiji's words, his profoundness, and the beautiful thing is it's written by somebody far, far away in time and space. But just listen to these lines, please. Spend some time with these lines. Even if you have to read these lines after the video, please do read this poem. It's called Burnt Norton by T.S. Eliot. I'm reading from the second part of this poem and second stanza. At the still point of the turning world, neither flesh nor fleshless, neither from nor towards, at the still point, there the dance is, but neither arrest nor movement. And do not call it fixity, where past and future are gathered, neither movement from nor towards, neither ascent nor decline, except for the point, the still point. There would be no dance, and there is only the dance. I can only say, there we have been, but I cannot say where. And I cannot say how long, for that is to place it in time. The inner freedom from the practical desire, the release from action and suffering, release from the inner and the outer compulsion, yet surrounded by a grace of sense, a white light, still and moving. Erbang, without motion, concentration without elimination, both a new world and the old made explicit, understood in the completion of its partial ecstasy, the resolution of its partial horror, yet the enchainment of past and future woven in the weakness of the changing body, protects mankind from heaven and damnation which flesh cannot endure. Time past and time future allow but a little consciousness. To be conscious is not to be in time. But only in time can the moment in the rose garden, the moment in the arbor where the rain beat, the moment in the draughty church at smokefall be remembered. Involved with the past and future, only through time, time is conquered. So what a beautiful set of lines, and if you read them again, you will see so many profound things that Swamiji has dropped here and there, almost cryptic. With this, I again express my gratitude for everyone who's listening to this video, to Om Swamiji's indirect and direct teachings in my life and how my life is completely improved. I express my gratitude to all the gurus of Swamiji's tradition, Swamiji's gurus of his parampara, and every guru that have made me what I am today. So I express my sincere gratitude to each one of you. So again, with gratitude, thanks a lot for watching the video.